Hey and welcome to our tutorial. Today we will continue with creating this fake 3D cubes pattern inside Microsoft Word using Visual Basic for applications, that is using macro. And this is what we aim for. This is actually what we have from the last time. So from the previous tutorial we know how to draw a hexagon using 3 custom shapes. Those shapes are polygons, so polylines. If you haven't seen the previous video, please check it out. There's also a comment from another user which shows how to draw this shape using diamond shapes, which is also pretty cool. But today we will mainly focus on coloring those shapes to get this fake 3D look. So let's talk about the lighting a little bit. I've chosen a very common lighting scheme where there is like a fake sun in the top left corner and shines mostly from the top, a little bit from the left, so that when it hits the surface, the top part is being lit as much as possible. There is a little bit light going to the left side and less light on the right side, so the right side is the darkest one. We can color the hexagon this way, that is using the simple solid colors, but in order to get more realistic looks, we will probably use gradients. So if I focus on one of the hexagons, like maybe this one, you can see that there is a little bit of shading going on, and that shading is when the individual 3D cubes touch each other. So it's like in the corners, like around here. You can see it's almost like an ambient occlusion effect. There is not much space for light to bounce, so it's getting a little bit darker. So if I focus on just one individual shape, you can see for each side it's going a little bit darker around the corners. So we will try to add gradients like this for each side. We will try to make the gradient just a little bit darker when it comes to the corners. So with all that said, let's jump to our previous document. This is this one. I will just move it a little bit to the top so I can see both the code and our hexagon. I will open our macro, which is draw hexagon macro, and let's try to add some colors. So I'll move it even more to the top like this. So this is the code to draw a first shape. Instead of selecting it, I will say that with this shape we want to do something, and the something will be that we want this to be without any line. So I'll say line line dot visible equals 0. And for the fill, I will set the foreground color, object theme color, to maybe 3 this time. And that's the color of text, but for different color schemes that's like a different tint of black. It's not definitely black color. It has a little bit of color in it, which is nice, and it will look nice when we start creating those gradients. So that's the color. We also need to set the gradient, and we will use a function called fill.toColorGradient. This function requires a few parameters. First is style, and I believe that for the first shape we will use the horizontal or vertical one. I think it's horizontal. We will have to try. It's sometimes pretty hard to guess which is the right one. The second parameter which we need is variant. This is a little bit of misleading because it requires a number. So really it's just a trial and error to get the right gradient. Then I will say end with, and I will run this. And I should get some gradient, and I'm getting some gradient which goes from like this black color to white color. Now usually I've seen that I've seen setting the two colors using the fill dot back color, but somehow this is not working for me. Maybe it's because I'm using the object theme color instead of RGB colors. Anyway, I have to do it in a different way, and that is to set the gradient stubs once the gradient is being drawn, and that's probably the second stub. So I'll say second stub dot color, sorry, not application, but dot color dot object theme color. And I will actually set this to very same color, number 3, but I will set the again gradient stubs number 2 dot color. I will set the what it's called tint and shade, which sets the brightness or darkness of the color. And I will do it for both the second stub and this for color which is used as the first stub. So I can either set the first stub tint and shade or do it in here for the foreground color. I will probably do it in here for the first stub. So that fill that gradient stubs first stub this time, sorry, and that will be the tint and shade. So the first stub will be a little bit darker, but not too much. So maybe I will choose a color around, I don't know, 0.5. I mean the tint and shade, and the second stub will have tint and shade a little bit lighter, and the tint and shade goes from -1 to 1, the 1 being the brightest, so it may be, for example, 0.8 in this case. So if I run this macro again, I'm getting some kind of gradient. It's just a little bit darker on the top and much lighter on the bottom, which is exactly what I'm aiming for. So what I will probably do is first I will create a new variable for this color. So I will say hex theme color equals 3. Then I will use this variable for both the first gradient stub and second gradient stub. It will come handy when I will decide to change the color later on. Then I will just copy this entire section of drawing the custom polyline and just paste it for the second shape, which is the right shape. So I'll just paste it in here like this, and if I run this, you will see also the second shape has the gradient fill or some kind of gradient fill. It's probably the wrong one. I can easily tell by changing the tint and shade going from -0.8 to 0.8, which will reveal how the gradient is being drawn. It's being drawn as the horizontal one. I want this to be drawn from the corner, so I have to set this style to something different. So I will set the style for the gradient to some diagonal. And again, it's a little bit misleading, but I believe that the second one should have it set to diagonal up. And the way I know it is just, by trying. So if I run it, it will be from the corner, but you can see it's from the different corners. So I have to set the variant to be number 2, like this. Now it's going from the right corner. And then I just play with the tint and shade. So I can maybe stick to -0.8 for the darkest color, but the second color, the light one, will be, for example, -0.5 or so. So it's from the very dark to a little bit of dark color like this. You can see it's quite dark. We can change it later on. But let's move to the third shape. I will just copy this again, paste it for the third shape, which is this one. Run it again. I will again change the colors, the tint and shade, to go from -0.8 to 0.8, so we can see how the gradient is being drawn. And I believe I can change the diagonal down instead of diagonal up, and I should get the right angle or the right direction of the gradient. So the only thing missing is to change the colors, and it will go from a little bit dark color to, let's say, for example, 0.3 or so. So we are getting a nicely shaded cube or 3D cube or hexagon made from 3 pieces, where the corners or the vertices are a little bit darker. You may have noticed that I am just running the macro over and over again. So if I show the selection pane, I have quite so many shapes. It doesn't matter right now when I'm testing how it looks like and how it should look like, but I will probably delete everything and create a new loop where I will draw multiple shapes at once. So I will make this a little bit bigger for now, and I will define few new variables. It will be probably columns as long and rows as long. So what I need to do is I need to calculate the hex width based on the number of columns, and let's define the columns. Maybe, for example, 10. Rows could be, for example, I don't know, 3 for now. Let's keep it small. And we will calculate the hex width based on the columns and the page width. So we'll say ActiveDocument.PageSetup.PageWidth divided by columns, and the height is being calculated based on the position, sorry, based on the width. I don't need to specify the X and Y position. This will be calculated automatically inside our loop. So I will comment this out. Then I will create a simple loop. So I will say for counter rows going from 0 to rows -1, and also for counter columns going from 0 to columns -1. I will draw everything. So I will just offset it a little bit so I can see better. Then I will say next counter columns, and also next counter rows. I'm missing EU. Okay, so next counter columns, next counter rows. Then I need to adjust the X and Y position for each shape. So I have to set the X and Y position based on the counter rows and counter columns. So I'll paste it in here. I'll uncomment it and just set the exposition to be counter columns times hex width, and the Y position will be counter rows times hex height. Hopefully that would work. So if I offset this as well, I'll make my code a little bit smaller so I can see also the Word window, and I will just try to run it to see what happens. And immediately you can see I'm getting a nice 3 rows of hexagons. Obviously I don't want those to be drawn like this. I want those to be offsetted a little bit to the right and move to the top, so they are forming this grid. And it's described in almost every other tutorial dealing with hexagons, so please go check it out if you don't know what I'm doing right here. But I will add another variable which will be hex x offset, and I will set this hex offset based on the row. So I will set if counter rows modulus 2 equals 1, then I will set the hex offset to 0, for example. Else I will set the hex offset to the half of the width of the hexagon, so hex width divided by 2, and if then I will use this hex offset for the exposition, so I will just add the x offset. So let's see what this does. Seems like it should be the other way around. I should have it set in the opposite way. So what I can do is I can set that if this is modulus 2 is 1, I will say to offset it, otherwise it will be not offset. So if I run this again, every second row should be offsetted, so the only thing missing is I have to move everything a little bit to the top, which means I have to move it I have to set another row Y value not as the hex height, but hex height as 3/4 of hex height, so multiplied by 3 divided by 4, or multiplied by 0.75. So the Y position is counter rows times hex height times 0.75, like this. So that should hopefully fix the spacing issues. And we have a nice looking pattern, like I was showing previously. Maybe what I can do is what I was doing in the other document, some of those cubes are in a different color. That's very easy to do. I just need one more if statement to set the hex theme color. So I will set if random number is bigger than, for example, 0.8. So it will not happen all the time. It will be maybe 0.9. It will be only sometime. I will set the hex theme color to some color, I don't know, maybe 6. Otherwise it will keep it black. And if I run this again, from time to time when the random value, it goes from 0 to 1, so when it's bigger than 0.9, which only happens from time to time, I will set some random color being 6. I'm not quite sure which color is this one. Otherwise it will be black, which is number 3. So if I run this, hopefully some of those will have different color, and you can see I have some orange cubes in here. That's because I have probably the default color scheme. So if I go to design ribbon, I can change the colors to something nice like the blue warm, kind of like this one. Also the black is not really black, it's somehow very dark tint of like a violet color, which I kind of like. Now looking at the pattern again, I may change the right shape to go to a little bit lighter color. So the right shape, this is the right shape. I will change the second step to not be -0.5 but maybe 0.1 instead. And I may also make the top shape a little bit darker. So this is the third shape, this is the top shape. I will maybe use 0.4 and 0.6 or 0.3 and 0.6 instead. So let's try to run it one more time to see what we got. And that looks much better. So let's wait until it's being drawn, and that's it for today's tutorial. Thanks for watching.